The arrival of the holiday special this afternoon is one of the first signs that protests by resident action groups are being heard by State Rail. The town's rail station was upgraded just a few years ago, and since then services have steadily eroded. Today the protesting residents found a sympathetic ear with opposition leader Bob Carr, only too happy to push the cause of the residents in the teetering Maitland electorate.
Well, it's typical of what's happened all around New South Wales. This government's cutting the heart out of basic public services, like a rail link from this important centre. But at the same time, it's found $90 million for a bikeway in eastern Sydney. Now, I say that's a government with the wrong priorities.
The protest group has won some ground from the government. 2 XPT services to Murwillumbah and Brisbane now stop at the station on a request basis. Although the service is only on a 3-month trial, the protesters say they're convinced that continued pressure will see the service remain on a permanent basis.
Northern New South Wales is referred to as the home of soccer in Australia, and tonight they retake their place amongst the nation's best as the BHP Breakers. The months of toil, heartache and waiting for the recall is about to come to fruition when the Red and Blues trot out against the brilliant Adelaide City team. And there are a few anxious moments to endure before kick-off at 8 o'clock tonight.
I think the main thing is now we've got to put up a good performance tonight and entertain the people when they come tonight to the game.
And the call has gone out for everyone to rally to the cause.
Our committee has worked very hard over the years, and I feel that, it come to fruition now, and I think everybody should get behind us and help us out as far as soccer is concerned.
All the infrastructure may be in place and there may be the odd hiccup or two tonight, but when it's all boiled down, the performance on the paddock is the crucial one.
Without performance, I don't think we can get anywhere, and I think that our team, should perform reasonably well. We can't expect everything overnight, but I think as things progress along, I think we'll get better as we go along, without any doubt.
It was the night of nights, the Breakers making their debut in the National Soccer League, and they received a great reception on entering the stadium. Pleasantries were exchanged, welcomes made, players stood proud, but often little things go amiss on opening night. Adelaide City came to town with a fearsome reputation, but the Breaker boys opened the better. City were defending grimly, and it was only their goalkeeper Robert Sabika who denied the Breakers. Noel Barclay was playing havoc up front and again stretched the Australian custodian. But in the 38th minute, Adelaide were in through Alex Tobin after a goalmouth scramble from a corner. Down 1-0, BHP Breakers threw everything at Adelaide, Kosh crashing through the wall but saved. Then City nearly scoring an own goal from a corner. And from the return cross, the Breakers all but scored. However, let a side like Adelaide seize on a mistake and they will make you pay. And that's what happened in the 71st minute. Dominic Longo stripped of the ball. Zoran Ilic didn't waste any time onto Stuart Maxwell and it was 2-0. Although beaten last night, the signs are there that the BHP Breakers are a good side.
I'm a little bit critical, but at the same time, they really did work hard and we probably didn't get what we deserved in the end, but we've got to learn from these things.
The burnt-out shell of a van in Wharf Road was just one remnant of the arson spree. Police physical evidence investigators took over where firefighters left off, following a trail of damage from the old Newcastle City Mission building in Hannell Street. Piles of paper and rubbish had been pushed into corners and then set on fire just before 10 p.m. The rear of the derelict building was badly damaged. The 000 board at Newcastle Fire Control Headquarters lit up again around 2 a.m. for another fire at the vacated family daycare centre adjoining the old Glasshouse Cafe in the Civic Block. Rubbish had been set alight under an indoor staircase, heat from the flames bursting windows. Minutes later, the blazing van, followed by a builder's site shed in the West End. These are a little bit out of the ordinary, even for a Friday and a Saturday night in the city.
Yes, they certainly are, especially the derelict buildings. We can put it down to derelicts sometimes being in there, but two are going in the one night. It's a little bit beyond the odds.
The station now routinely takes a rash of 000 calls from the city area on Friday and Saturday nights.
I'm not a social prude, but I think something to do with the hotels being open and a lot of the derelict buildings being opened.
The RAF has perched on the city's outskirts for 50 years, but still needs permission to bring the troops to town. Ceremonially, that is. With swords drawn, bayonets fixed and colours flying, members of the 3, 76 and 77 squadrons and the Operation Conversion Unit put their best feet forward with the Air Command Band from Richmond. They made a formidable force heading west along Scott Street with only one man standing in their way, Police Superintendent Ian Cleary. After a quick check of their bona fides, he let them pass to launch celebrations at Civic Park. A flypast by Mackie jet aircraft announced their arrival. The Lord Mayor welcomed the contingent and let the festivities begin with the crowning of the Matara Prince and Princess, 17-year-old Lee Burns of Shortland and 18-year-old Melanie Cook of Adamstown. Matara fun was at full steam with rides and entertainers in Civic Park, while yachts from Lake Macquarie put on a passing parade for the Steely City. Further north, crowds packed Foster's Main Street for a grand parade marking the 25th Great Lakes Oyster Festival. A garbage bin derby got the show on the roll, followed by truckloads of community, service and trades groups. There was a no good nav rattle over, and a local Oktoberfest contingent swinging steins to the beat of town bands. Even the dogs had it easy.
Brisk westerly winds produced small but glassy conditions at the cliff, and the Malibu men were throwing their big boards about like enthusiastic youngsters. Style plays a big part in the judging criteria, so it was toes on the nose at all costs. The goofy footers were setting the pace on some fast-breaking left-handers, while the naturals often had to be content to ride the foam into the shore break. Local surfers will figure prominently in all three divisions, with the semi-finals and finals scheduled for tomorrow. The Newcastle foreshore was packed with spectators, all keen to take in the madness that is the Birdman event. Strong winds made conditions on the launching pad frankly dangerous, and there were plenty of sore and sorry competitors. Some opted for the safe approach and refused to take off, a wise but unpopular move. Some of the more bizarre entries included an environmental chicken and a modified bodyboard. At least it floated after splashdown. Not so lucky were the cowboys at yesterday's Newcastle Rodeo. The showground surface was a lot less forgiving than the water of Newcastle Harbour, and the bulls came out on top on more than one occasion. The festival continues during the week. At Elderslie this weekend, the New South Wales Skydiving Championships have been conducted in near-perfect conditions. 100 competitors from the home state, Victoria and Queensland, participated in 3 categories, and I suppose if you are game enough to jump out of a plane halfway to heaven, then you have every right to name your team whatever you like. In the intermediate 4-way freefall, where a point is awarded for every completed change in formation, Team Real Thing won from Foreplay and Indigo. In the 4-way freefall relative work, 4 grips were successful from Act Natural and Layabout Louis, and in the difficult 8-way freefall relative work, it was a win for Changing Atmosphere, Macca's Magic was second and Vixen third. While the more experienced skydivers took the event in their stride, a group had their first jumps and they were beside themselves.
Oh, great, mate. Terrific. Oh, yeah, it's really good.
You can't explain it, you've got to do it. And it was like, when you have a sensory overload, it's like you just blank out. But then after that happens, you're totally aware and you just do what you have to do. And it was great.
Did you ever think a couple of years ago that you'd be jumping out of a plane at about 12,000?
I swore I'd never do it. I was stupid jumping out of a plane. But yeah, once you do it, it's great. It's fantastic.
So you're going to go back again?
Definitely. As soon as we can get the money together.
Wind conditions prevented the remainder of the program to be completed, with one group of 20-odd Sky pilots returning to Earth in a more conventional manner, much to their dismay. But one thing is certain, they will return just for the thrill of it.
The day was a test of skill and stamina for Butterworth. No sooner had he clinched the 8-foot board section than he was back out in the water for the 9-foot final. Earlier in the day, former world champ Stuart Entwistle won the Masters, and he was a keen spectator during one of the contest's most absorbing struggles. Butterworth had kept his momentum going during the early stages, but the younger Mark Hancock, who filled third in the 8-foot section, was determined to go a couple better in this one. In the end, it was a judge's decision, and they preferred Butterworth's longer rides to Hancock's more radical, modern approach. Next in the water were the old Malibus, boards as old as the men who ride them. Leg ropes are a no-go in this traditional event, so there was plenty of swimming to be done. That didn't deter Novocastrian David Bambi Campbell, though, and he tried every trick in the longboarders book to become a popular winner. There were plenty of happy surfers to be seen, a sure sign of yet another well-organised malfunction.
Keeping cool became the name of the game, with this colourful clown leading the way with a strategy to beat the heat. Crowds enjoying a day-long program of entertainment gathered under the shade of nearby trees, which provided a perfect natural barrier against the heat. Others took time out to cool their heels with a quick paddle in the fountain. As usual, children flocked to the novelty rides, with the miniature dodgems and the Ferris wheel the big winners.
Touted as one of the best fields assembled for the prestigious tournament, it was always going to be difficult to make the final, let alone win the Spring Carnival crown. The decider was a beauty. In white, the Rob Perella skippered team of Ian Taylor, Steve Cox and Peter Rubin up against Joe Amos, John Snell, Brian Anderson and Graham Denton. Snell's 4 got away to a cracking start with a 3 on the first end, and at the end of 10 led 13-8. But the fast-talking, fast-driving cabbie from Queensland rallied his troops, and Perella's team stormed back to take a 2-shot lead at the end of 15. Slowly but surely, however, John Snell steadied and narrowed the gap, then finally took the lead. Ahead 24-22 with one end to play, Snell was able to grab another 2 shots to win the 9th Beresfield Spring Carnival Fours tournament 26-22.
More than 340 paintings are on display. Local artists have submitted work covering a range of subjects and styles. However, this is the most controversial entry to grace the walls of the exhibition. Charlemagne is the creation of 24-year-old Novocastrian Paul Farley. The self-taught, relatively unknown artist says he spent a year painstakingly sculpting the clay frame and painting what he says is a Renaissance-inspired figure.
Their style is so much more refined. It seems to be so much more expressive. Everything took so long to create such a work that sort of the artist could have been evolving for years.
While most of the artwork in the exhibition can be bought for under $1,000, Charlemagne has a price tag of $250,000.
Let's just say it's just there for I know it's the right price.
The exhibition will open at the Newcastle City Hall tonight and continue until Sunday. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The young Watson family has had a tough 2 weeks getting over the death of their pet German Shepherd. The dog was found fitting in the backyard after taking a strychnine bait.
All I want to know is who did it, who could do such a thing.
Nearby residents aren't taking any chances locking up their pets, but over the weekend, just 3 blocks away, another 2 dogs were baited. Locals fear not just more animal deaths, but a threat far greater.
I'm sort of worried that my kids are going to go out onto the streets and pick up a bait out there too.
Strychnine is a very poisonous substance, and if they were to get it on their hands and suck their fingers, yes, of course it could be poisonous and potentially fatal.
Until a culprit is found, parents have been warned to keep a close eye on their children. Early symptoms of poisoning include cramps and then convulsions. While the baitings have meant tragedy for the Watsons, a generous donation has renewed their faith in mankind. A German Shepherd pup which can hopefully win some young hearts. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The hairtail isn't the most attractive fish in the sea, but Japanese buyers are paying $4 to $5 a kilo, creating a lucrative market for professional fishermen in Australia. Newcastle Fishermen's Co-op is exporting 3 to 4 tonnes of hairtail a week, but recent publicity over the high prices has given many amateur fishermen the wrong impression. They've telephoned the co-op asking how they can cash in on the Japanese market. The answer is they can't. While there's nothing wrong with catching the fish for home consumption, attempts to sell it without a professional fishing licence are illegal. The Fisheries Department is convinced the trade is going on.
A few of the amateur fishermen, they may have contacts, they might be putting their fish through licensed fishermen, or they might be selling their catch illegally through clubs and pubs.
Amateur fishermen are under surveillance, and today the Fisheries Department seized a haul of about a dozen fish which had been illegally caught. The penalty could be high.
Well, penalties range from $5,000 to $10,000 for commercial offences. These would be commercial offences, so the maximum penalty would be $10,000.
The penalties sound high, but as the Fisheries Department explains, the hairtail is a strictly limited resource. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
While playing competitively in the Winfield Cup is a big task, running the multi-million-dollar business can be just as demanding. Since its inception, the night sport has been dominated by the Newcastle Rugby League, the country cousins of the New South Wales League, giving the NRL the casting vote on the night's future.
Not that there's been any block vote by the Newcastle Rugby League directors, far from it, but theoretically that could have happened.
Last night, a meeting of the General Committee of the Newcastle Rugby League voted to give the Knights control. NRL directors will number one less than half of the board's members.
I think the change gives the Knights the chance to control their own destiny by electing the majority of shareholders, and yet still gain the benefit of an input, a substantial input from the Newcastle Rugby League, and that's good for rugby league.
The membership of the Newcastle Knights is yet to vote on the decision, but their acceptance is regarded as a formality. Meanwhile, another signing for the club, 21-year-old speedster Adrian Brunker, is back for at least 2 years. Only 5 months after the state election, Labor is gearing up for another attempt at power.
I've come to the entrance and I've come to Maitland with the intention of shoring up our position if we are successful in court.
Inspecting industry in Maitland, Mr Carr says the court decision on the contentious election results is at least a fortnight away. With local Labor candidate Tony Keating in tow, he criticised the government's treatment of rural businesses, saying his party would allocate a further $8.5 million in tax rebates to ease the recession. Labor's offering comes just 1 day after the visit of Agriculture Minister Ian Armstrong, the minister pledging new services for Maitland's farmers. People in Maitland and the entrance can expect more political campaigning till the court brings down its verdict. Bob Carr will be back in the entrance tomorrow, his 13th visit since May. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Launch Stackpool returned to service in Newcastle only 4 months ago after an extensive refit. The ageing vessel has had recurring engine problems since then, but this is the first time repairs of this magnitude have been required. With the boating season officially beginning on the long weekend, Newcastle waterways are especially busy with the Matara Festival. A late change this afternoon has worsened boating conditions, but a police spokesman said the absence of the Stackpool would be adequately covered by other vessels at Nelson Bay and further south at Broken Bay. Newcastle Water Police will sail a replacement vessel, the 11-metre Fearless, back from Sydney tomorrow. The Fearless is a sister ship to the Intrepid, which served as an effective replacement vessel when the Stackpool was undergoing its refit last year.
With most of the Hunter gripped by drought and the region's dams slipping towards the critical level of only 60% of capacity, the Water Board has been forced to plan for a long dry summer. This week, the board approved a 4-point plan for water restrictions, which could come into play as early as next month.
When the level drops to 60%, which we think will happen about mid-November, we'll be putting a ban on sprinklers.
Also in the plan, as a last resort, a price increase for water usage.
Once levels get down to below 40%, we're going to have to look at pricing initiatives so that not only do we penalise people for increasing consumption, we also reward people for reducing consumption.
The prospect of a price slug is still 6 months away. At the moment, the combined storage level is at 68%, with Grahamstown at 66.2 and Chichester already down to 60. But with the storage levels dropping by 5.5% a month, the board is launching an education campaign to tell the Hunter to think twice before turning on the taps.
The trends are worrying. The trend over the last couple of months has been increasing water demand. Hence, we need to get out there and talk to the community, get them on side.
Newcastle doesn't have a designated nude bathing area, and you'd have to look pretty hard to find bare bodies on the city's main beaches. But complaints of offensive behaviour around Susan Gilmore Beach and south of Merriweather have council looking at a blanket ban.
I'm getting more and more complaints about it, and I sympathise with the bona fide naturalists who don't cause any trouble. But the fact is that the very small minority of a small minority spoil it for everybody.
Council will discuss the bans at its next meeting, and if adopted, they would be enforced with signs and patrols by council and police officers. Many see the move as an overreaction.
If you didn't come down this way, well, you wouldn't come across it. So I'd be of the opinion if they were wanting to do that sort of thing, fine. You know, as long as they keep to themselves.
Well, I've never actually been to Susan Gilmore, but it doesn't offend me at all.
If people want to go naked, well, that's where they go. Plenty of other beaches in Newcastle to go to.
Oh, it's a bit of an overreaction, I think.
Topless bathing would not be included in the bans.
I think that's a sign of the times that people don't take that much notice of, although I do think we've got a skin cancer problem with it and I wish they wouldn't do it.